Focused on what's going on in Israel with Hamas and the threat of the expanding war with Hezbollah to the north and what's happening with all of these rebel groups in Syria. But has anyone been looking at what China has been doing? 43 planes, 7 ships near Taiwan as we speak. Maybe they're seizing on the notion that maybe we're preoccupied, or the world is. Gordon Chang is probably the most remarkable people to read China that I know of in my years doing this job. Glad to have him back, the Gates Stone Institute Senior Fellow, author of China is Going to War. He leaves no doubt just to the title. Gordon, great to have you. So what do you make of what they're doing? I mean, this is more than provocative behavior. This is something that's almost a daily occurrence.
Yes, and it's not just Taiwan, Neil. What we saw, for instance, at the end of October with regard to the Philippines in the South China Sea, Scarborough and Second Thomas Shoals got very close to war. Matter of fact, President Biden on October 25th actually had to speak from the podium at the White House and warn China that we were prepared to use force against Beijing to defend the Philippines. So it's gotten to be a very serious situation where China's been ignoring our warnings, escalating all throughout East Asia, and that means that we are pretty close to conflict.
I wonder where this goes, though. I mean, this is the same week we learned that China is interested in talking about, nuclear proliferation. Maybe we can score a deal on restraint there. And I'm thinking, why out of the blue now? Well, they've got essential parity with us on that. So why now?
I think part of it relates to the Chinese economy right now is in distress. We're seeing all sorts of anecdotal information and underlying statistics, which basically suggest that China is not growing, might even be contracting. And they've got a housing and a debt crisis that they can't deal with. So Beijing needs the support of the United States and the rest of the world. But that also makes them dangerous, because if they feel for one reason or another that they can't control the Chinese people, then their only response to keep the Communist Party in power is to lash out. So we're dealing with a volatile situation. And because the regime is closing itself off from the world, we have less visibility into what's going on.
Do you know anything as well, Gordon, about more of their ships are in the neighborhood around the Middle East, and particularly around the Mediterranean, on top of what we have with the USS Ronald Reagan and the USS Gerald R. Ford, keeping somewhat of their distance, but they're in the neighborhood.
Yes, they are. And they did this in 2013 at the height of the Syrian civil war, when they brought their most impressive looking ship at the time into the Eastern Mediterranean as a warning to the United States and NATO not to intervene. And I think they're probably doing that again, because they've got 6 vessels in the region. And I think that's their playbook, especially because they're working very closely with Iran and working, of course, with Russia. So you have an axis that is challenging the United States across the board.
We seem to be more focused for the time being on dealing with Israel, holding off, Iran. But when it comes to Iran, I certainly know the Russian ties. What about the China ties?
Well, in 2021, we had that 25-year, $400 billion comprehensive partnership agreement. Also, in February of this year, there were those 20 agreements that China and Tehran signed up when the Iranian president went to Beijing. And of course, China's increased purchases of Iran's oil, which are subject to U.S. sanctions, by the way. But that's giving a critical lifeline. And by the way, we are seeing North Korean weapons in the hands of Hamas fighters. We're seeing Chinese weapons in the hands of the Houthis. The Houthis are now fighting Israel. And also Hamas has some Chinese weapons, which probably are leftovers from a little while ago.